Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the weekly WXYZ Sports Chat. Lots to talk about today because, frankly, I shouldn't even be here today. Maxwell, White, digital producer.
You could still be here. You would have, you would have been tired, but you could still be here.
I don't know if I would have made it.
Webcast is important.
It is, and you've taken enough time off of it that you should know.
Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
We're gonna start on this already.
We are gonna start this already because I am full of salt and vinegar or something like that because it's a webcast and I probably shouldn't use profane language because I'm just not happy. I'm not happy. I don't think a lot of people are happy.
There's not much to be happy about.
There's not much to be happy about in the state of Michigan when it comes to the NCAA Tournament at all, really. Here's how it works if you're just joining us for the first time. We'll be on the air for about an hour. Your comments are what fuel this show and keep me either sane or just push me off the edge. It's up to you, really. Frankly, I'm kind of in a mood, if you will, today. Thanks to Seth for starting me off on the high and muddy this afternoon. So anyways, this is how it works. You can tweet at me, JRoseWXYZ on Twitter. You can also just comment on the video page right below where you're watching this on the old web page. Hit up Max White at Max White WXYZ or our just Channel 7 WXYZ Detroit Twitter handle as well. Facebook is, of course, I think there's a Facebook thing on there now.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can comment there as well.
Lots of
ways to get in touch with me. You can gloat about how good your bracket is. You can talk about how busted it is. You can make blame for why Michigan and Michigan State lost. You can also call in 248-356-0077. 248-356-0077. So I got to start with Michigan State because obviously this is one of the biggest upsets of all time in the NCAA tournament. A 15 seed has only beaten a 2 seed now 9 times since the tournament has been a thing. And if you want to get frustrated, you have to start at the top. I think you have to put a lot of the blame on Tom Izzo for this. And I think it wasn't one of his best coaching jobs that he's ever done. I think that going into the game, he had so much confidence in his team to just do what they were supposed to do. And then when things weren't going their way, Middle Tennessee was making shots. There was no adjustment. There was no difference. There was no sense of urgency. Put it in a zone. Try something different. They never tried anything different. And here we go. We're done. So it's a perfect storm when you really think about it. Middle Tennessee State did everything that they needed to do to beat the upset maker of the day. I mean, they hit 54% of their shots. Michigan State shot above 50% too, but it wasn't good enough. At one point, they were 8 for 12. Middle Tennessee was from three-point land. They had guys that were just playing out of their mind good. And I think what hurts the most for me is the fact that Middle Tennessee went out and just laid an egg against Syracuse yesterday. That was where it was like, wait a second. This is the team that was supposed to, basically move to the Sweet 16, be that Cinderella story, because they looked so good against such a heavy favorite, and then they were just terrible. They were so bad. I mean, you got to look at what the stats show. I mean, and the stats show a lot about what happened to this Michigan State team. I mean, Reggie Upshaw, 8 of 14, 3 of 6 from three-point land. The guy had made 12 three-pointers all season long, finishes with 20 points. All 5 of their starters.
81 points. I think the starters combined for 81 points.
Yes. Here's the starters for Middle Tennessee. 21, 15, 15, 11, 19. Their bench scored
9 points.
9 points. 9 points.
Their starters tied the entire Michigan State team in points.
Yep.
They played out of their mind.
They played out of their mind good. And look, for me, it's upsetting. It's not the end of the world. I am not about to proclaim that the Michigan State basketball program is even remotely close to a decline at this particular point in time. They had high expectations. They talked a lot about those high expectations, and they didn't get it done. It is what it is, but it also is a sobering reminder that this tournament is one of the best in sports. You just don't want it to be your team. And I think that's where Michigan State fans are going, ugh. But you've also, as a Michigan State fan, lived the highest of the highs as a 7 seed, as a 9 seed, as a 4 seed, going to the tournament, going to the Final Four, and being the upset artist. I mean, okay, I've been here for a year and a half, a little more than a year and a half now. In my time working in Detroit, I have covered a Final Four for a team that really had no business making a Final Four last year, a Final Four in football for a football team that they earned their way there, but they definitely weren't the best team. They showed that, getting beat by Alabama. And then you have this basketball team that goes through and has one of the best seasons in Michigan State regular season and tournament, Big Ten tournament history, and it just thud. So, as a Michigan State fan, you really can't complain about the overall success of everything, but they didn't win championships. So if you're one of the people that says championship or bust, you're probably upset. But if you're one of the people that kind of looks at the programs in general and can deal with that and the success, take it day by day, then you're probably pretty pleased with yourself.
I don't think there is a way to deal with this loss as a Michigan State fan. I mean, you get over it, but it's almost the only way to explain it is that it is March Madness and anything can happen. And for me, it's not surprising because it is March Madness, and in basketball, a team can get hot, and if a team gets hot, they're unstoppable, and a 15 can beat a 2. But with the expectations of this team and the fact that you may have a Naismith winner on the team, and he may have been baited, but he came out and guaranteed a championship, and then it was a bad loss.
That was a frustrating thing for me, and I talked a little bit about it on the Suburban 47 Sports Cave yesterday. I don't like in any sport when teams or coaches come out and they're like, hey, we're going to win it all. Now, Michigan State, no one on the team said they were going to win it all except for Denzel Valentine, who was kind of baited into the question, but was like, yeah, we're going to win a national title this year. That's our plan. I just go out and play. Go out and play the game. Where have you heard anybody from Kansas being like, oh, we're going to win a national title this year? They're the number one team in the country. Where's anybody from North Carolina saying, oh, we're going to win a national title this year? Everybody knows that when you get to the tournament, your goal is to win a national title. That's from the 1 seeds to the 16 seeds who will never have a chance. But you bet your butt you go into that locker room to a 16 seed. What's your goal? To win this game and march on to the national championship game. It's a given. You're in the tournament. Everyone has a chance, an equal chance. And I was just a little frustrated when all that stuff kind of came out because you put the pressure on yourself to then go out and do it or have egg on your face. And right now, Michigan State has egg all over its face.
Well, and I think another reason this is bad is because their path to the tournament was so easy. And especially now, it was going to be a relatively easy path compared to all the other brackets. But now you're looking at Michigan State, if they would have won, would have had to play Syracuse. And then number 10 Syracuse. And then if they get past number 10 Syracuse, they're looking at number 11 Gonzaga. You play the number 15, the number 10, and then the number 11 seeds.
And depending on what happens on the top half of the bracket, you get the 1 or the 4 seed.
And you're in the Elite 8 against a 1 or a 4 seed. A very manageable 1 seed and a good 4 seed, but a 4 seed that Michigan State could have beaten. Yep. And suddenly you're in the Final Four.
Yep. I mean, you get through that first game, and I think Michigan State is going to the Final Four. You never thought that they were going to lose the first game, and that's the beauty of the tournament. You're all looking ahead. You're looking ahead. You're looking ahead. That's part of the problem. Now, Michigan State said they didn't look ahead. They didn't take anybody lightly, but
you looked ahead.
15-2 to start the game. I mean, you can't spot anybody 13 points in the tournament. I mean, I don't know.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to put it out on Twitter, and I'll give you my answer. I know you talked about this on the 7 Sports Cave yesterday, but which loss was worse, the loss yesterday or the loss against App State with Michigan? And for me, as a Michigan fan, I think the Michigan State loss was more devastating because of the expectations and what was going on around it. But Middle Tennessee State was still one of 68 teams in the country that made the tournament. They were still a top 68 team, per se. While Michigan playing App State, that was a different division. Because to me, as a Michigan fan, the more devastating loss was the Michigan State loss this year when you lost to Michigan State. It was more devastating and it hurt a lot more. but it wasn't as bad of a loss as the App State loss is.
It's hard to quantify how much this loss hurts because apples and oranges when you're comparing sports.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it. There's only 12 football games a year. So it's really difficult to football is much more of a team game.
Well,
like your entire team has to get beat in in football, as opposed to all three phases of the game have to get beat in football. In basketball, you got 5 to 8 guys in your rotation. You know what I mean? It's different.
If a team gets hot, you can't stop a team that gets hot. And in football, like if they're bigger, they can beat you if they're just a bigger team.
But I mean, when you talk about a team getting hot, Middle Tennessee shot 58% from three-point land, 56% from the field, 62% from the free throw line. Michigan State, on the other hand, 55.6%, but only 48% from the three-point line. There's your difference right there.
Yeah.
I mean, but they also got out-hustled. The loose balls were going to the way. They couldn't get a stop when they needed it. Their defense had one of its worst performances. They got beat at their own game, defense and rebounding. How many times on this webcast have I said teams in the tournament that win are predicated on what? Defense and rebounding. And Michigan State didn't do either of those things. I mean, they were 28 rebounds to 30, so they out-rebounded them by 2. But how many offensive rebounds?
Boards. Middle Tennessee's offensive boards
10
are huge.
offensive boards. 10 offensive boards for Middle Tennessee State. And that's an undersized lineup.
And they were getting the boards when it mattered, especially near the end of the game when Michigan State, you grab the rebound on a miss and you bring it down the court and you score a few points. I think 2 or 3 times Middle Tennessee got the boards within the last 5 minutes, on the offensive side in the last 5 minutes.
It was a crucial blow, and I think this is one of Michigan State's best teams that'll never win. I mean, it's obviously not going to win anything, but it's one of the best teams that will go down as like, wow, what 29 wins. I think that's second best in school history, and they're not playing anymore.
We got a couple questions. One from Matt wants to know what's with all the upsets this year.
Parity, Matt. Parity across the board. I mean, you're seeing more and more basketball players that are going into AAU circuits at a younger age and developing into players that could play not only at high level but mid-major levels. And there's only so many scholarships per team. So better kids are getting not as many opportunities to play for the big schools, and they're trickling down and they're playing. And plus, what do we see from all these mid-majors that have the one thing in common? Senior leadership.
That's what I was just about to find out is how many, what Middle Tennessee State.
I mean, you look at Northern Iowa. You want to know why Northern Iowa lost that game last night against Texas A&M at the last 44 seconds? Because 2 of their seniors fouled out of the game. That's your team when you're a mid-major. That's why you only see a team like a Northern Iowa once every 3 or 4 years. That's why you see these like George Mason that year was so good. Senior leadership. In this year particularly, there was a ton of seniors on Middle Tennessee State. You're seeing that these senior teams are much better. That's why Iowa was a shocker that they didn't do better in the tournament. And look, they started the season with 16-1, and because they had seniors. They played 5 seniors across. When you have seniors in college basketball, you have a better team. Doesn't mean you have better talent, but it means you have a better team. And sometimes team beats talent in the tournament until you get to the Final Four, when you can see that talent out-edges a team. And again, it's a weird, just hearing me say that is somewhat confusing, but it's true, because if you have a team like Middle Tennessee State or like a Northern Iowa or like a Stephen F. Austin, all of those teams have senior leaderships, and they spread the ball around, and they know how to play with each other because they played for 4 years on the same team with the same guys. That's going to beat a team that's only been together for 2 years or 1 year, but when it comes to the Elite Eight, the Final Fours, and that's why you see these teams lose in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, it's because you have a whole week to prep for it, and you're just going to have guys that are going to the NBA. And Stephen F. Austin, Northern Iowa, and the like, Gonzaga don't have those NBA caliber players.
Well, and I think the same could be said almost in a sense for the Indiana over Kentucky. Now, Indiana's a better team than those teams.
Absolutely.
The Indiana players aren't going to go to the NFL or the NBA like the Kentucky players are with the one and done. They'll have some, but you're going to have a lot of guys who stuck around for 3 to 4 years and who are just playing college basketball because they love it, and they're going to go off and
every year. Kentucky is the anomaly because every year Kentucky, and Duke too, North Carolina to a certain degree, but North Carolina has some seniors.
North Carolina seems to keep a lot of their players. They always have.
But the road. Every year, Kentucky, John Calipari talks about, yeah, my team's really talented. I got a lot of great individual guys. How they play together, that's why he's only won national title with Kentucky. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
He's got more talent than any other team across the board. But to get them to play as a team, man, that's the balance. But here's where I'm going to move on from Michigan State. We'll talk a little bit about Michigan.
Well, Robbie got in on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
Said, do you think Tom Izzo is too intensive a coach and future prospects may not want a screaming coach? I don't think so. Isn't Mike Krzyzewski the same way?
Yeah. Every coach is different. Now, if you want to play for a coach who's not going to yell at you, go play for John Beeline.
I think if you want to play for a coach who wins, you deal with the yelling coach.
Right.
You win a national championship.
Look. Here's where I'm going to leave Michigan State at this particular point in time. You got to get Deanna Davis to stay at school. I know that he's potentially a lottery pick in the NBA draft, but that kid is not ready. He's not ready to go to the NBA. His mental and mature state is just not where it needs to be to deal with the grind of an NBA season. He will get chewed up and spit out. Now, the nice thing is the rule changes this year, because Dede will be able to go to the combine, get pushed around, get yelled at and told that he's not ready for this, and doesn't have to sign an agent and come back to school. That's new this year.
Okay.
So kids can test the water a little bit more. So don't be surprised if Dede says, I'm going to go to the combine and I'm going to check it out, and then comes back and makes a decision. Dede is raised by his great-grandma, grandma, and his mom. He doesn't have that male influence that sometimes says, yeah, let's go get that money. So education. That was a big selling point for his recruiting. I think he comes back for another year, because this is my pitch if I'm Tom Izzo or anybody who's got Deonta Davis. And if you're watching, Dede, what up? But here's my point. You're going to play in the league at some point in your career. Whether it's now, or whether it's next year, whether it's in 2 years from now. You're going to have an NBA future. You're 18 years old. Come back to school, mature, grow as a human being. That's what you do in college. Get an education. Have something to fall back on, because you'll play for a long time. A lot of people really think you have a ton of upside. Talk to Gary Harris. Talk to Draymond Green. Talk to some of the guys that are already in the league. Figure out why they decided to stay, and look at how much success they're now having because they stayed in school that extra year. Both of them could have gone early, and they decided to come back for one more year.
And Cassius Winston, Mr. Basketball 2016.
That's correct.
Michigan State commit.
Yes, he
I
is.
figured we bring that up as we wrap up Michigan State talk.
Yep. And another thing, here's another draw for Dede to come back to school. You've got a great incoming class to play with. A bunch of young guys that are going to get up and down the court. Next year's Michigan State team is going to be phenomenal to watch. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to lose a lot of games. Not a lot of games, but they're going to lose some games that
They're not going to win 29 games.
probably not going to win 29 games. But that is a team that's going to have a ton of talent, a bunch of guys that can just jump out of the gym. They're going to be up and down, high flying. It's going to be really fun to watch. And watch Izzo coach them up, because there's some really, really good talent in that upcoming class. So, look, putting to bed the Michigan State season is always hard. And I got an analogy I wanted to share with you guys, because my buddy and I were talking about it on the way to hockey last night. We won 6-2. Semifinals in 2 weeks. I'm going to invite everybody out after next week's show. It's like your favorite television sitcom ended 3 episodes too early. You know that show that you watch religiously and you're like, great, Game of Thrones for me. It's like, oh, Game of Thrones, I can't wait for it to come back. If Game of Thrones came out for 1 episode and was just like, nope, off the air, you're going, wait a minute. No, there's supposed to be more episodes. There's supposed to be 5 more games until this game and season is over. But no, you get 1. You get 1 episode, and that's the feeling I have right now. That's that empty feeling I have of it abruptly ended without the story being told.
Without any warning either.
And without any warning.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I kind of sit with it at this point. So, look, I mean, I'm over it. I'm over it as an alumni. I'm over it as a fan. But I'm also grateful for the opportunity as a journalist to be in that locker room and ask tough questions to those players and to Tom Izzo afterwards. Because, I mean, like I said, I've experienced only success with Michigan State over the past year and a half, and now I got to experience some not so favorable success with them. And it was an interesting chapter in the in the personal career. All right, Michigan basketball. Brad Galley has his one-on-one with John Beilein tonight at 6 o'clock. You got to see what he said. Apparently, the past 48 hours have been devastating to John Beilein. And no coach wants to lose in the tournament, but for him to carry that with him still, I think that's a really telling sign that Michigan basketball fans who say, oh, we don't care if basketball wins, I don't believe you. I don't believe that Beilein's only there to get to the tournament and then lose. He wants to win. Look, the guy was in the national championship game just a few years ago. He wants to get back, especially when you have a 12-point lead over Notre Dame and a chance to go to the Sweet 16 is kind of there for
That
you.
was a frustrating loss as a Michigan fan.
So, look, Michigan's getting back every piece they had this year because Karis LeVert was hardly a part of the team this year. Spike Albrecht was also not a part of the team this year. So he's getting all of his talent back, plus he's getting a nice recruiting little freshman class. If he can get everybody up to speed and get some inside presence, in the future, Michigan will be okay. I don't think it's not as frustrating because the expectations weren't there for the Michigan team to do anything.
It was frustrating because they had the 12-point lead and they just kind of.
Well, but that's what this team had done all year.
Yeah.
Michigan State had gone out and won games, and even when they were behind, they came back and won a lot of those games.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of knew what you got out of that team. You knew who they were. And then when they didn't come back and finish this game, that was like, oh, okay. Well, Michigan had given away games and lost to better competition every game this year. All of their losses were to good teams. They don't have one bad loss. So you kind of knew that they couldn't get over the hump against some of these better teams. And so that's why I'm kind of like, it's frustrating, but it's like, it's not surprising. It's the same team, and that was the problem, I think, with this Michigan team all year, is they lacked that true, leadership, senior leadership to get over the hump against some of these big teams and hold on to that lead late. So it'll be an interesting offseason for Michigan, I think, but.
And losing two seniors hurt.
Yeah.
The season,
Yeah, I think it did too. I don't have it in front of me, but the webcast brackets.
Oh.
Remember we filled out the webcast brackets?
That.
They're downstairs. Seth, if you want to go and run and grab those from my desk, they're right on the corner.
Oh, man.
We'll review what we did there because I got to make an apology for you all who
my
are
God,
watching.
that's right. Oh, no.
Because, look, Max and I didn't get the full completed sheet from you guys after the hour that we filled out with Adam last week. And so we did a Facebook Live to fill in some of the blanks. And full disclosure, you had picked Middle Tennessee State on this very webcast. And I had maybe put it out there. I put it out there to the Facebook Livers that if I got enough people who said, no, those people are crazy, Michigan State needs to win the first game, that I would change it.
We did.
And we did.
Nobody said that.
Nobody said Middle Tennessee State later in the Facebook Live.
Yeah,
group.
We had about 30 Michigan State.
So there's probably some kicking and screaming going because we would have looked like the smartest people. You would have looked like the smartest people in the room by calling that upset. However,
on ESPN, what was it? One of like 3 brackets that had Middle Tennessee State beating Michigan State. I think it was 98% of people had Michigan State beating Middle Tennessee State, including myself, and with Michigan State all the way to the championship. Now, I don't know about you, but I always root for an upset, especially if one is brewing. So even though I was rooting for Michigan State, halfway through that game, I started to root really hard for Middle Tennessee State. And I've rooted against Michigan before when they're about to get upset. I just love seeing the upset. And it's going on in the middle of the show.
There it is.
And Carolyn Clifford yells across the room, "Who's cheering for?" She goes, "Seth, is that you cheering for Michigan State?" Because Seth is standing up with a Michigan sweatshirt on. Yeah, are you cheering against a Michigan State? And Seth, you may know Seth. He's a digital new media director. answers the phones for the webcast, said, "No, it's Max." Just threw me under the bus hard. He pushed me in front of the curb. He ran onto the bus. He threw the driver out of the way, and then he ran me over with the bus.
Well,
how's the brackets looking?
Okay, so good news. We'll start with the good news because good news is always good. In the West bracket, I have a 99% accuracy rate. I picked every single one of the first games. Oregon and Duke and Oklahoma, I did miss, and I technically was right until the last 44 seconds. I picked Northern Iowa to beat Texas A&M. So I have one game wrong in all of the West region.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to pull up my bracket. I think I did pretty well to start until that that Michigan State.
Now,
loss. Wait, which region were you looking at? West?
The West bracket.
I lost on Baylor. That was it.
Oregon, St. Joe's, Yale, Duke, Northern Iowa, Texas A&M, VCU, Oklahoma, all correct. Picked Oregon and Duke, correct. Picked Oklahoma, correct. Missed Northern Iowa. Now, for the bad news, everywhere else. I only got 5 games right in the South bracket. Kansas, UConn, and then Kansas over UConn, Miami, and Villanova. Everything else is blacked out. The only way I can win any more points from that is Kansas. I only got 5 games right in the East bracket, but I did call the Wisconsin over Xavier and UNC moving on. However, I have West Virginia and Kentucky in the Elite 8, so I am not getting any more points from the East. And in the Midwest, I got 4 games right. Virginia, Butler, Iowa State, and Utah. And Virginia winning, but I have Purdue and MSU in the Elite 8, so.
The left side of my bracket's looking really nice. Let me tell you what. Out of all of the games played so far in the South and the West, I've only missed 1 game in each. Now, if you look at the right side of my bracket, there's a ton of red. But the left side's looking pretty green right now.
The fans bracket is it's busted.
Yeah, because Michigan State wins it all.
They've got Michigan State winning it all, but they do have a chance for Xavier over Wisconsin, WVU, Kentucky. They're out of the East. Virginia and Iowa State. If Iowa State wins, you'll get 1 more point there. But no, you're in bad shape here. Oregon and Oklahoma have to play in the West, and Kansas is the only points you can get left in the South. So
imagine how much different things could be if they we went with their normal pick.
They would have had Syracuse beating Middle Tennessee, and they would have been right there. But that's okay. Same thing for Adam's bracket. His is beat as well. Look, talking about our own brackets is boring, so we'll move on from that. Look, it's 1 o'clock. Let's reset the show here. Send out a tweet. We're talking Red Wings and Pistons playoff push. Because here at the all-new Circle 7, over the next, since my schedule's wide open all of a sudden, I don't know if you guys had anything else planned for the next couple of weeks, but I was planning on not being here. We're going to really be hitting heavy the Pistons and the Red Wings. The home games that are coming down the stretch, I mean, if you haven't been to a Wings or a Pistons game all year, you have nothing else going on, and right now is a really interesting time to get down to the Joe or get up to the Palace, because the Pistons have what? They're in the midst of a 9-game homestand, and they've already won. Let's see here. Pistons. So the Pistons they're right now in 8th, tied with Chicago with the 8th playoff spot.
Yep.
But here we go. Today they're playing Milwaukee. I'll be down at the game. Wednesday they're home against the Magic. I'll be at that game as well. Friday they're home against Charlotte. Saturday they're home against Atlanta. Next Tuesday they got Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook coming to town. That'll be a great game. Then they're home against Dallas on April Fool's Day. So, man, you got 6 home games in a row to go and check them out. And if they win 4 of those home games, they might move up to like a 6 seed in the playoffs. And, you know, they got a Chicago, Miami, Orlando trip. Then they're home against Washington, Miami, and then at Cleveland. And look, the Pistons, I think, are going to make the playoffs. There's tickets available from $10 for the next 4 games.
Yeah, StubHub is. Pistons tickets are still cheap.
So get up to a Pistons game,
The
people.
same can't be said about the Red Wings tickets.
No, Red Wings
Pistons
tickets are a little bit more, as we say, expansive.
Would you say, here's my question for you. What do you think is, if you had to pick one, both the Pistons and the Red Wings make the playoffs, or both the Pistons and the Red Wings miss the playoffs?
I think the Pistons and the Red Wings both make the playoffs.
Okay, that's what I think.
I absolutely think that the Red Wings have the second easiest schedule in the NHL. Only team that has an easier schedule is the Flyers, who are right behind them by 3 points.
And they're up with three. They have 3 points on the Flyers right now. Flyers play tonight against the New York Islanders, and the Red Wings play tomorrow against the Lightning. And I mean, these are 2 big games for both teams, because if the Flyers lose, they stay 3 points. But also, I believe the Red Wings are only 4 points behind the Lightning and 3 points behind the Bruins for second and third place.
It's tight. It's real tight.
So
it's
this
going to be
this game tomorrow.
It's shifty.
Is a huge game
Yep.
for the Wings.
Yep.
Now the Bruins, do they play?
We play the Bruins one more time on the road.
And the Bruins don't play until Wednesday. So if the Wings win tomorrow, they could have third place in the Atlantic Division and not have
Here's
to
the
worry
thing.
about that.
They just got to keep winning, because it's so tight and it's so down the stretch. There's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think you have 11 games left, 10 or 11 games.
10 games left for your Detroit Red Wings.
And they have 2 in hand over the Flyers, I believe.
So if you got 10 games left in your season, you got to go above 500 if you want to make the playoffs. I think that's the goal. You go 6-4, you're in. Right? 6-4 would give you 12 points.
I said when they had. Let me see if I can go back and find my tweet.
It would give you 12 points though, if you go 6-4. 12 points would how? And you say that Flyers only have 8 games left?
No, Flyers have 12 games left.
Oh.
We have 2 more games than the Flyers.
So the Flyers, if you go 6-4 and the Flyers go 6-6, you still beat them. But if they go 7-5, so you got to go better than 500 here. I think you got to go. You got to look at this way. You got to beat Tampa. You got to beat Montreal. You got to try to beat Pittsburgh at home. You got to beat a bad Buffalo team. Then you're at Montreal again. I mean, you're not going to go on a 5-game winning streak, but if you can go 4-1 there, that's the first 5 out of the way. Then you got home against Minnesota. That team's bad. At Toronto, you can't lose to Toronto. They're so
the worst
bad.
team in the NHL.
Then you have a chance to end Philadelphia's season by beating them at home. That's a Wednesday rivalry night game. Then you go on the road to Boston and the Rangers, 2 teams that are going to be in the playoffs. So your last 2 games are your hardest 2 games, but you should be peaking towards playoff season anyways, and you're going to want to be playing that high level because you're going to be seeing those teams in the playoffs should you make it there. But there's no reason to think that over the first 8 games of this next 10 that they can't go 6-2.
I think the Red Wings need 97 points to get in the playoffs.
And how far are they away?
They need to go 7-3 in these next
7-3.
10 games.
I just said I think that over the first 8 games they could easily go 6-2, and then if you split with Boston and the Rangers, that gives you the 97 points.
Yeah, I think they need to go 7-3 over this home stretch.
It'd be really interesting because
that's what it was. I said they needed to go 9-3 over that last stretch. You couldn't go 8-4 and 8-4 or 7 whatever. And they won the first 2 games, and they need a win tomorrow over the Lightning. I don't know if they'll get the win, but other than that, yeah, I mean, you should beat the Canadiens. The Penguins could be a tough game. The Penguins are also fighting to stay in the playoffs. Should beat the Sabres, should beat the Canadiens. Wild are a tough game. Should beat the Maple Leafs. Flyers. The Flyers game is interesting. It's the last home game of the season for the Wings. And both teams, if they stay like this, are going to be 1 point away. I mean, that game with 2 games after that. The thing that the Red Wings have an easy schedule until the last 2 games of the season, which is the problem.
But it's not necessarily a problem because to get into the playoffs, they need to be playing good enough hockey to beat playoff teams. So you can't have a lapse right now in the next 8 games against some non-playoff teams or some teams that are already out of the playoff chase. You can't have a lapse against the Buffalo. You can't have a lapse against the Minnesota. You cannot have a lapse against Toronto. You just lost to Toronto like last week at home.
Yeah, I was at that game.
You can't,
1-0.
You can't lose these games to these bad teams, or if you're going to get past. So I don't really. I mean, look, would it be easier if they played 10 games against the worst teams in the league? Sure, but they already are. They're already playing against some of the worst teams. Where's Montreal in the standings?
Montreal, you're looking at. Hold on.
Are they out?
Oh, they're way out. They start off so hot, and they've been so bad.
So you're playing.
Montreal is, I believe, they're way out. They're,
okay, so you're playing Tampa as a playoff team. Pittsburgh's a playoff team. What about Minnesota? They in the West?
No.
Okay, so you're playing 2. Philadelphia's in the hunt, and then Boston and the Rangers. So you're playing 5 of your next 10 games are against playoff contending teams.
But I believe all but 2 of those teams are outscoring them.
Well, they got to look. If you're going to win hockey games, you got to score goals. I mean,
Which they have been.
With
the exception of that Toronto game, they have been.
So, I don't know. I like their chances.
The problem is if they stay where they are now, you're facing the President's Cup winning Washington Capitals. I mean, those guys, I believe Washington right now has 107 points. They are 51, 15, and 5.
Wow.
The next closest team to Washington in points are the Dallas Stars with 95.
Okay.
Washington puts up points. And, I mean, Peter Mrazek has been sick. Jimmy Howard has played really well in his absence. But you need to do something to get some points on the board, and they have lately. It'll just be interesting. It's going to be fun. I mean, it's something to watch because now that college basketball no one cares about in the state of Michigan because everybody's bracket is busted and there's no teams left.
Grumble. Yeah, it's frustrating. Look, Red Wings go out and win games, get in the playoffs, keep the streak alive. I know that's not a popular thing amongst fans because they're like, well, I'd rather them miss the playoffs than get exited in the first round. No, get there for 25 years, keep the streak alive. They're going to be, you don't ever want to not make the playoffs. That's like saying you don't want to make the NCAA. Like, that'd be like, well, I'm glad Michigan State's out of the NCAA tournament because I didn't think they were going to beat Kansas anyways. No, don't. Even if that's true, no. Get in the playoffs, give yourself a chance. Same thing with the Pistons. Gosh, is there a team in the city that needs a playoff run more than the Pistons?
2009.
By playoff run, I mean getting into the playoffs. They haven't been in
2009 was
6
the last
years.
time. No, it's almost 7 years now.
7 years. 6, 7 years where they've been out, and they have a real opportunity to do it. They got to show up and play every day.
Sean chimed in here and says, does anyone really care about the NBA anymore?
That's the problem. If you don't make the playoffs, then you're right. No one's going to care about the NBA. But, Sean, I'll tell you one thing. If the Pistons get good again and the Palace is rocking and they're playing for championships, sorry, dude, you're going to be buying tickets and going to that game because you're going to want to be a part of that. You're going to want to be – when it was 2004, 2005, you could not get a ticket.
That whole time.
You couldn't get a
when they
ticket.
made those 6 straight Western Conference finals.
Now you're getting tickets for $10. It's like, ugh.
Which is still more expensive than it was at the beginning of the season.
Right now it is.
I think people care about the Pistons, as you said, when they're good. I think the fact that they play in the suburbs is a huge deal too, because it's easier for families to go to games. And now it's cheaper, but it's also, instead of, for me, I live in Rochester, so it's 40 minutes for me to get down to the Joe for a game, whereas it is 10 minutes for me to go to a Pistons game. It's great.
I really like to see that. Look, the Pistons have a real opportunity to pass Indiana Pacers for 7th in the East. They are a half a game behind the Pacers, and they both have 36 wins. So there's a real opportunity for the Pistons to not only get to that into the playoffs, but get a better seed and play Toronto. Now, I don't think they'd beat Toronto in a 7-game series, but they could do some damage. Look, just get into the playoffs. That's kind of where I'm at with this whole thing. I mean, do you want them to not make the playoffs? I mean, that's my question to you guys.
I want the Pistons.
I mean, I want them in the playoffs. Why wouldn't you want them in the playoffs?
I mean, it could be a year where all 4 Detroit sports teams make the playoffs. No, I mean, like later on with the Tigers and then the Lions possibly. Now that's getting way far ahead of myself, but I don't know how someone couldn't want the Pistons to make the playoffs. You know, if you haven't been to the Palace at a time when the Pistons are good, it's a great place to be. The atmosphere is crazy. You have Mason going over there, the flames shooting up in the air. The Palace is a fun place to be when the Pistons are playing well. And I don't know how anyone could say they don't want the Pistons to make the playoffs.
Real briefly, Tom Izzo's currently on Detroit Sports 105.1. We have friends over there. Ryan and Rico are having him on live. He's talking, and one of the things that he just said, I just reading some tweets here, there's been bigger and better programs that have gone through this. We had a bad game. I don't disagree with him. I think he's looking back at it saying, you know, other programs have lost these types of upsets before, and it's not going to change the trajectory of the program. So when somebody asked me, Stoney asked me yesterday on the Sports Cave, would you rather have Michigan been able to get that punt off instead of Michigan State returning that the other way, or win this game, win the game against Middle Tennessee State? And my answer is very clear. I would have rather had Michigan make that mistake and have Michigan State win that, because the momentum in that football rivalry is teetering on the tiniest little tip.
I don't think Michigan State makes the college football playoff if they lose that game.
Absolutely not. They don't win a Big Ten championship, and they don't make the college football playoffs. And the momentum behind Michigan's program, the perceived momentum that's anti-Michigan State, they're not connected technically, but when they play each other, you bet your bottom they're connected.
Well, and just because Michigan, even if you're like, okay, I would have Michigan make that punt, and then we end up losing that game, and you're not guaranteed that Michigan State beats Syracuse, and then you're not guaranteed that Michigan State beats Gonzaga, and then you're not
it's the
guaranteed
tournament.
Michigan State
Everything
beats Virginia.
like this happens once a year. Michigan State's not the only team to get upset this year. I think on Friday they had a 10, an 11, a 12, a 13, a 14, and a 15 seed all win.
Well, and it happens every year.
That's 6 upsets.
Michigan State is just never the team that gets the upset. You know, there was George Mason that one year, but it wasn't the first round, and it wasn't a 15 over a 2.
Yep.
Every year you see a 15 or a 14 seed fall. It's well, 14 more than a 15. But you're always fine with it because it's like, oh, yeah, my bracket's busted, whatever. But this year it hits home, and that's why it's tough to deal with.
Looks like Jamie Dixon has said it's time to move on from Pittsburgh. The head coach of the Pitt Panthers looks like he'll be going back to his alma mater where he played at Texas Christian University, TCU. So there's going to be a head coaching opening in Pittsburgh. Pretty interesting scenario with that because Jamie Dixon, I think he's right. I think he should have moved on. He's just struggled to really kind of get anything going there beyond the 1 seed, and yeah. Anyways. All right. Any more questions lingering in the inbox, Mr. Maxwell?
No, sir.
Okay. I think that we'll wrap things up early today. Like I said, keep an eye out for John Beeline's one-on-one with Brad Galley today, and watch our coverage of the playoff push for both the Pistons and the Red Wings. Casey Hollins, myself, Brad Galley are going to be all over the place because we got nothing else to do.
Hey, that seems pretty mean to the Red Wings and Pistons. Like, we don't have anything else to do.
But that playoffs don't start for 3 weeks.
I know.
We were supposed to be in Houston. I had to cancel my hotel.
Chicago? Weren't you supposed to be in Chicago?
I was supposed to be in Chicago. No, Chicago. All right, that's it for the webcast this week. Thanks so much for joining us, as always. We will be seeing you guys next Monday, same time, same place, 12:30 to 1:30. Have a great week, and I'll see you later.